I know that earlier Jeremy and Brian talked about obviously the importance of this industry and where it's going. And so obviously a key thing to me would be about what the kids want. Designing for the youth, my translation, what the kids want. What are they interested in? So to that end, we have a very exciting guest coming up, and I believe that he'll be able to give you some information. Who's familiar with Overtime? Right? You guys are all familiar with Overtime. So popular. A lot of the young ladies I mentor love Overtime for basketball because it covers sports in a way in which, you know, a place like ESPN just can't do. And it's non-traditional, it's fun, it's exciting. Kids are always on their phone. And so why not talk to the person who is the founder of Overtime? Dan Porter, where are you, my friend? Are you here? Oh! Come on up. How are you? Gary Belsky, are you here? Where's Gary? Oh, you guys are sitting in the audience. You're fooling me. I thought we were going to be sitting over here. I'm confused.
It's like a game show.
It's like a game show. Come on down. Former editor-in-chief for ESPN The Magazine and has a Sirius XM Sports radio show. So that is Gary. Thank you so much for being here. And again, Dan Porter's the CEO and co-founder of Overtime. They are going to talk to us about designing for the youth. Gary will be interviewing Dan. Gentlemen, take it away.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Gary.
How's it going so far? Will you do me a favor? Will you give your cocktail party explanation of what Overtime is and how it began? And by cocktail party, I mean you're meeting somebody, they have no idea who you are or what it is.
So on Saturday, I went to a birthday party for like an old person at a bar, which I usually don't go to bars. And it was loud. And they were like, "What is Overtime?" And I looked up, and on MSG was one of our shows. And I was like, it's that. So sadly, I can't do that here. But Overtime, I'm trying to build with the whole team the biggest sports network in the world. It's not a digital publisher. It's a video network. Imagine ESPN, except the voice is really different. And it's, instead of being distributed in one place, it's on every possible social platform that you could distribute on. We have short form. We have 25 different shows that are 10 to 20 minutes per episode. And the idea is that we started really covering kind of athletes, you know, a year or two before they became pro. And traditionally, that content was designed less for the younger audience and more for parents and recruiters, and we reformatted using everything that we knew about digital content. Previously, I was the head of digital talent at Endeavor, which is the largest global talent agency in the world. So I had 17 agents who represented the 250 biggest YouTubers in the world. So I took everything I understood about creating YouTube and Instagram and digital talent, applied it to sports, and now we do college, pro, basketball, football, soccer, and gaming.
How would you describe the way, I worked at ESPN for 14 years. I was part of the content cabinet and sort of I ran a couple of things myself, but knew all the people who ran other things. How would you describe the way in which sort of decisions are made? Like, how is programming decided? Like, who is determining what the shows are about and what you're covering, et cetera?
Yeah, so when I went and met with ESPN, like right when I got started, they said, do we put you in the high school section or do we put you in the recruiting section? And I said neither, because like you should put us in the dope content section, because that's where we go. So the whole secret in all of this is basically just reformatting. And I would say in general, like we cover athletes who our audience want to watch. So I think about, you know, if you think about almost our business as Saturday Night Live, like Saturday Night Live has this incredible cast every year, and sometimes people are on it, or they move on and they do other things. And so Instagram is our casting call. So we'll cover 30, 40, 50 athletes on Instagram, and we'll look at what kids respond to, and they're like, wow, they love watching that person, but they don't like watching that person as much. I don't care about rankings. I don't care if that person's the 80th or the first person. None of that matters. I'm trying to create amazing storylines and kids who people want to see. And then those people who really do well on the short form stuff, we dig in and we create longer form programming around them. And in general, I try not to interview them. There's no microphones. I try to center them in the center because it's watched on a phone. There's no like, hey, there's There's no interviewing. I try to get the kids to hold the camera as much as possible. I try to use everything that is a hallmark of digital content, faces more than bodies and everything else like that, to tell a story in their words. So in some ways, you could imagine that social media is a platform for athletes, but most, and for all of you and for me, but most people, me included, have a limited ability to do anything other than hold our phone out this way or that way. Whereas for us, we're providing the resources for all of these athletes to tell their stories and tell who they are, and to tell it in a way that it's interesting for other kids to watch. Because if you're an athlete and I'm a traditional media, I'm like, so where are you gonna commit? Are you 4-star? Are you 5-star? You know, I actually don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about where they're committing. I don't care how many stars. In fact, I hate ratings. I hate stars. I think they're disgusting. Instead, I'm like, who are you as a person and what are you about? And that's what our audience wants to see.
Well, so I wanted to ask you about that because I wanted to go back to the casting call on Instagram. Like in the broadest sense, and you're not allowed to say a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
The question is, what are the trends that you notice about why certain athletes are paid attention to and why others aren't?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything. It's personality, really, and I think personality comes out in how you play, how you are on and off the camera. I remember a lot of times when I worked in the talent business, you know, they'd say, oh, we have this woman, she's a fitness person, she has 5 million followers on Instagram, we're gonna bring her into the office and we're gonna sign her, and you would meet her or him sometimes and you would just realize, like, they don't have the personality. And I think you can look in any pro sport and you're like, wow, there are people who just have a lot of personality in their game and how they are and how they present. And some of it's around how they are with their teammates or anything else like that. And that's just different. And it's hard because at the end of the day, we are covering team sports, yet the secret of digital is it's about people. I mean, that is why 95 out of the top 100 accounts on every single social platform are not brands and they're not teams, they're individuals. And it's understood here. I cover a lot of basketball in Europe, and they say, well, you have to put everybody in the whole team. And I'm like, I get it, but the audience doesn't want to see everybody in the whole team. They want to see that. They want to see that person because it is way easier for people to connect with other individuals ultimately.
Are there trend lines in sort of what it means to have personality? Meaning, are kids attracted especially to kids who are super confident and all about winning and all about, you know, their skills and why they're awesome, or are they into kids who are sort of sharing their struggles in life? Like, what are the pictures that people are interested in? Again, I'm sure there's many of them are true, but how would you characterize that?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would say that there's this business story about Lego, right? And
Sure.
Lego was in a decline, and they looked at all the trends, and all the trends said that young people wanted instant gratification. So Legos became bigger and simpler. I think when my kids were little, I was like, wow, these things are giant. And it didn't turn their business around. So they took a bunch of people who worked at Lego and they went and they visited kids in Denmark and all over Europe and just like spent time with them. And kids, I think, meant like 11 to 13-year-olds. And they tell this story about how they go and they visit this kid and he's got his Legos and his skateboard, and they ask him, which is the thing that you are most proud of, your Legos or your skateboard? And he says, actually neither, it's those. And he points to a pair of shoes in the corner, and the shoes are all like worn down on one side. And he's like, when people see me wear those shoes, they know that I have worked very hard to get where I am, and it's a badge of that. And all the Lego people said, holy blank, like, we're trying to make it easier. And what he's saying is that he actually wants it to be harder because he wants to be able to show his mastery and that he's worked hard to achieve that. They completely change it to lack of benefit for me because I'm very untalented. All those things that say like 500 pieces. Lego rebounds and becomes incredibly successful. So I think that it's not just kids who are naturally gifted, but I think there's something about how hard certain kids work combined underneath the personality, whether they're amazing or less amazing, that appeals to kids because they respect earned mastery to a large extent.
Do they also respect sort of people being honest and showing who they are and giving, access to strangers and other people in the world? What I mean is there a premium or any kind of reward for the actual act of being open itself?
I would say, well, no stranger danger, but I would say that people who are more open tend to be more successful on digital platforms. I mean, when I was representing all of these, YouTube stars, and I sat on the same floor as the television people, and they would say, why do kids want to watch somebody sitting in their bedroom on YouTube talking about this and that when I have this show with this person and that person? And I said, precisely for that reason, because it's real, it's intimate, it's immediate, and in the case of that, like the kids are the author of their own environment. If you think about, like, I used to be a professional musician, and when I was a kid, like, I didn't have a camera on my phone. I didn't have, like, the ability to record all this stuff on my computer. Like, the means of creation are so present for kids, and their ability to be so expressive is so different than it's ever been, that I think you're looking for people who can take advantage of those and who can, are so much more authentic, right? If I look through all my videos, my Super 8 movies are way less immediate and authentic than, something I captured on my phone of my kid when they were little or anything like that. I wanted to say one other thing,
Yeah.
which was, so I coached 10 years of youth soccer and flag football in Brooklyn. And the other day I was watching this little video on TikTok, and it was a kid in high school, and his video was, when you get a 70 in high school, and it was him crying, and he's like, when you get a 70 in college, and it was him cheering. And to me, like, that was so emblematic in a weird way of both high school and youth sports, and the fact that there's so much pressure because everything is at stake, right? Like your potential ability to win, your scholarship, your ability to able to get into high school, and all these other things are at stake. And then when you're in college, you're just like, this is awesome. And I think trying to capture the cheering for the 70 in college, even though we're all supposed to win in sports, is a huge element of, I think, what is missing, to some extent. And I look at sports, and even I look at, like, both my kids are out of high school, but, like, I would say, oh, you should be in the play. Well, unless I'm in the lead in the play, it's not going to look good when I apply to college. It's not going to do this. It's not going to do that for me. And I was like, wow, there's, like, zero ability to take any risks or to do anything fun. Nobody wants to play goalie because that is, like, the worst and the most punishing, or be catcher. And I think that those things, meanwhile, you flip over to what kids are doing with their phone and in their digital lives, and they're doing all kinds of things like that are way lower stakes. And so I think figuring out how to bridge that gap to some extent.
You are an interviewer's dream, and I'm going to want to try to get some questions that I know I want to get to because our time.
I was trying to be someone's dream. I don't know if it was an interviewer's dream, but
Stranger danger. Can you? This is an extremely gender diverse audience. Can you talk a little bit about the sort of how people respond to the stuff on Overtime in terms of female athletes versus male athletes, and also female audience versus male audience? Just whatever you want to tell us, because I'm sure some of this is proprietary.
Yeah, so the female, like, the response to female sports things, I mean, look, it obviously sucks, and it's really annoying, and it's stupid when it comes from a very particular male perspective. And so when we launched, we're now the largest women's basketball platform, and we have the biggest Instagram account, and our last video we published did more views than the 30 previous WNBA videos combined. And so I was like, I said, okay, so now we're going to start putting some girls basketball on the boys basketball page, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, let's make sure that there aren't negative comments because the internet is amazing for some things. It's also amazing for amplifying anonymous, crappy things that people say. And the reality is that when you tried to make it like a head-to-head physical competition, it was somewhat negative. And in basketball, there are fewer girls who can dunk than boys and stuff like that. But the fact is that our stuff tends to be a little broader around culture, people helping their teammate off the floor, celebrating, doing other things like that. And that stuff it absolutely killed on the boys' account. Like, there was no differentiation when you got into the broader element of it at all, and there were no negative comments. If I was trying to say, like, everything's equal, and this person's amazing, and that person's less amazing, maybe. But, like, in this case, it was like people getting scrappy with each other. Like this, I think the first one we ever posted was this, like, young lady who was lying on the ground on the court. Maybe she had lost or something else like that. And her coach came over and just gave her a hand. He just pulled her up. And the caption was like, we all need a coach like this in life or something like that. And it was, it did like 1 million views, and there was nothing negative about it. So I think what the audience responds to is less, like, from a business person's perspective, this is the audience for high school basketball. This is the audience for basketball. And this, on a size basis, is everybody in the world. I'm going for this. I'm not going for hardcore basketball or this or that. And so all of those inroads that are basically about telling stories that make us feel better about ourselves or tap into competition or anything else like that is where the opportunity is. And that's where the audience, I think, responds to as well. And I used to be in the games business. I made one of the most downloaded games in the history of the iPhone. And I always used to say, like, this is people who play hardcore games, and this is everybody else. And so I went to the car dealer, and I was like, do you play games? And the guy goes, no, I don't have any games on my phone. I don't play games. And he says, why? I said, I made this really popular game. It was downloaded 250 million times. And he's like, what's that? And I told him, and he goes, I love that game. And so for me, that was like always the thing. It's like, I don't like high school basketball. I love overtime. Like, the ability to tap into those core elements that are about humanity instead of like getting lost in all of the other things is really the key.
We only have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to sort of present a wide-ranging question to you that I think you'll have some thoughts on, which is, these folks are interested in engaging kids and keeping kids engaged as the tastes and proclivities of children continue to evolve and evolve very quickly. Like, if you were talking to people like this, what would you tell them to keep in mind in terms of how they have to think about keeping kids engaged in sports, and not necessarily the kids who think that they're going to end up in the pros or end up making a career out of it, but
Any specific age you're thinking about, or?
I don't think so. I just think, like, how do you think about it? Because in theory, like, you're thinking about.
So I think about video games a lot. My son is on a gap year. He's a pro gamer. He's ranked 90 out of 10 million people. Both my parents are PhDs and college professors, so there's a lot of angst around this. So I worked in the gaming business, so it's probably my fault. And it's like, why do kids like to play video games? And sometimes they don't like to, or they like to do other things. And the problem is that what happens is that people distill the wrong things. So it's like, oh, we have a gym and you run around and there's buzzers and you do this. It's like, you don't try to make like real life things feel like they're real life video games. Like, that's just stupid. Sorry. You try to dig into like, what are the things that people enjoy? And so, all games, for example, are based on ELO. ELO is like chess ranking, but it's like when you play Fortnite or you play something else like that, you tend to be put in a group of people by your ELO, which is like, you're gonna play people who are around your ability to play, right? You don't get put into some online game and just get crushed because game developers know that's a really good way to get you to never come back and play that game again. Whereas, you know, especially I coached when my kids were younger, a lot of kids who hadn't really played before, and they'd come out, they'd get humiliated, and then they would bolt. So you're trying to find people who are matched around their various skill levels. That's one thing that appeals. Obviously, gaming is like incredibly social. This idea of like some loser gamer drinking some energy drink in their, you know, basement who's overweight is like, it's a stupid trope that is completely not true. And in fact, if I look at all the people who are on our pro gaming team, every single one of them played high school sports, and 2 of them played D1 sports before they got injured. And so, but what they respond to is really the social element. It becomes a platform for interacting and making friends outside of school, you know, especially if you have a, you know, you don't find everybody who meets your needs at school and otherwise. And I think there are a lot of elements of mastery. It's not just one loss. Games are devised with all kinds of, you know, various badges and different things that you can win. And it provides a platform to be competitive without having everything at stake. And finally, like, if any of you are parents, I really doubt when your kids are playing video games on the Xbox in the den that you are pacing the sidelines, yelling, push up, move, over there, and everything else like that. And I used to go to my son's basketball game. My wife would have like a breakdown of everything he did wrong, and I'm like, he just doesn't care. Like, you're not gonna listen. And so I used to say, like, did you have fun? And, you know, I mean, these are cliches to some extent, but, you know, kids, at least they want a social domain where they can have some level of mastery, where they can figure out the rules that are implicit, where not everything is at stake all the time. And you got to do this to make the travel team, to do this, and stuff like that. And it's less about trying to imitate all of the things. So if you have kids, ask them why they like to play video games, and all the answers are really in there, and that's an element of sports. And I think it's definitely true. And I used to think about it a lot because I coached when I was still making games. It's less true in the game, obviously, but in the practices and in everything else like that, you have so much ability to have fun and to remove some of the shame that comes with, you know, being the goalie and letting the goal in or anything else like that, and to create things that are not so rigid drills. And the final thing I would say is that, I think, what I see is that, oh my God, if they don't learn these things now, they're gonna be in so much trouble. And like they have to learn sportsmanship and they have to learn to compete and win. And like they're never gonna compete in this economy and whatever. And it's like the reality is like these things are really not that hard to learn. And it's like I look at the kid who like was on my youth soccer team and we would be practicing and he'd be like, oh, a fire truck. And like that kid's incredibly successful in life. It's not like he failed to learn all of those things. Those things are not that hard to learn, and
He's a fireman though, right?
Yeah, exactly. He works on the dispatch side. And so I think there's like so much pressure around that the reality is that it takes away some of that you know, the element of fun. And instead, I'm just like, you know, you focus on the other things, ability to follow directions and pay attention and everything else like that.
We're out of time. Because you're a good talker, do you have a podcast, or do you write regularly or anything like that if people want to kind of tune into things you're thinking?
No.
Okay.
I write incredibly leftist screeds on Twitter, so don't follow me. Because, you know, we're going to take back America for the working people.
But so maybe if League Apps wants to have you on a podcast later on, you have some time then, it sounds like.
I might. Do we have any time for Q&A? I can talk really fast.
They didn't want to have Q&A, they being
Let the people speak.
But I think we should take 2 questions. Okay. Woo!
Fight the power.
Thank God somebody's raising their hand because it'd be really embarrassing if they weren't. That gentleman over there in the pink shirt. I mean, it's a lovely shirt. I didn't mean to call out your shirt color.
So as someone that's taken the charge for leading the development for esports here in New York City, how do you think the evolution of kind of getting the programs in proper place in development for the youth, where the computers are expensive, the systems are expensive, how do we get this youth development going?
Are you talking about youth development for competitive gaming? So outside of the United States, most competitive gaming is mobile gaming, all throughout Southeast Asia. And despite all of our various income inequality, reference to said Twitter feed, most people have phones, whereas like here there's so much focus on PC culture that if it were me, I would focus on mobile as much of those other things, because then when you're in PC culture, you're in a real arms race for zero ping, you know, high-end keyboards, graphic processors, and that, I mean, I was a public school teacher in the New York City schools in the late 80s, and man had not yet landed on the moon in the textbooks that I used. So the idea that I couldn't even get textbooks where man had landed on the moon and we're gonna get high-end PCs for gaming seems to me to be somewhat at conflict.
Dan Porter, guys. Give it up for Dan Porter and Gary Belsky. I really appreciate you guys for being here.